great big welcome to all of you joining us for this episode of the Teens4Wellness podcast. Alongside me as my co-host today is Everett. How you doing, man?
I'm doing great. With school starting up, I'm pretty excited to go into my senior year. It's my last year of actual high school,
Me
so
too.
we're excited.
I am also going into senior year. I am nervous, and there's a lot of work ahead.
There is, yeah.
Have you already started?
I have, yeah. Started a couple days ago. This is my first week. It ended today. Yeah. Today's podcast is sponsored by Stand for Kind. Take a stand against bullying in your school and help spread kindness and positivity by visiting www.standforkind.com.
Join the Stand for Kind community hosted by Geneva. All it takes is one click and you can connect with and make new friends. Video chat and join conversations about the casual to trending topics, mental health and anti-bullying, and more. Join the community at www.standforkind.com.
Fun fact, did you know that the handshake was believed to be originated as a gesture of peace or symbolizing sincerity when making an oath or a promise?
I did not.
How does a handshake make you feel?
It makes me feel like I've been accepted as an acquaintance. If I get a hug, it's like I'm a friend. If I get a kiss, then I get creeped out.
Okay.
Well, it depends on the person.
Okay. Well, for me, with COVID, I remember we all talked about how a handshake started. So it used to be like we used to take a handshake for granted, and every time we got a handshake, we wouldn't really care because it was just a handshake, you know? It was, a greeting or a business professional thing. And then after COVID started, all of us realized how much, a handshake actually means. So once we actually got back into the regular world, a handshake meant more than just, hey, how's it going? It was, nice to meet you. I'm proud to be here. I'm proud to be in front of you. And, physical contact is now a lot more appreciated now that it was actually taken away from us. So that's what a handshake feels like to me. It's something different than it was.
Nice.
There's a saying that goes, what you shake hands with is what you hold on to. So what are you offering peace to or a promise with? Is there something in your life that you're holding on to that you need to let go of? What are your thoughts?
That's a good question. From what I understand, there aren't any, grudges that I feel like I'm holding on to, but there might be that I don't even know that's causing stress. But so far, I feel like I'm all right. It's, I don't know, maybe I'm just too adamant about trying to go find snakes and catch every species before the end of the year, and I have to let that go, but I can't because, you know me. Mm-hmm. I don't know. What about you?
Well, for me right now, so with my senior year starting again, there's a whole lot of things that I'm trying to get involved with. So I've been involved with, video production and creating media in my school for such a long time that this year I actually get an intern and be a teacher and teach one of those courses.
Nice.
Yeah, so, and that's just that's a very small piece of the pie, but there's a lot of other things there's DECA that I'm trying to get into. I'm the TSA advisor for my high school, and I'm double rostering on my hockey team. So going back to the business professional thing, something that I shook hands into was my job. And trying to take on all these different things and trying to be a senior in high school I think I might need to let go of my job just so that I can pursue these things and be a high school student rather than signing my life over to my job. So I feel like that's something I need to let go of.
That's smart. I had to really figure out what I was going to do to plan out my senior year because things overlap so easily.
We're looking forward to getting our guest's thoughts on the matter. He's a TikToker, public speaker, and host of his own podcast, Above Board with Candor Path. Please welcome to the podcast, Rich Bluni.
How are you, man?
What's up, guys?
Nothing much, just chilling.
It's good to finally meet you. I have talked with this man over Instagram a couple times, and I'm a huge fan. My mother's a huge fan. He does a lot of good. He's just a good person. You got to get to know this dude.
Thanks, man.
Absolutely.
I appreciate that. Well, I'm excited to be able to talk to both of you guys. I was saying that I've got Ethan and Everett. I feel like you guys should be like E squared or something like that. And that's coming from somebody that never got above a C- in any math class I ever took in my entire life. So that's impressive. What's going on, guys? You doing all right?
We're doing pretty good. Before we dive into the interview, we have a segment on our podcast called Quick Questions. It's a way for us to break the ice a bit. So, Rich, what's your favorite personal possession and why?
You know, if I had to think about that really quick, you'd want to give some answer that sounds really deep, like like the locket my grandmother gave me before she died, or if I was honest with you, it would be my iPhone because I probably use this thing for literally everything. Like I was trying to think, if I'm hungry, Uber Eats. If I'm lonely, I text my wife. If I miss my kids, I can FaceTime. So I could sound deep and meaningful, but if I was honest, I would have to say that my favorite personal possession is my iPhone. And I just got a new case for it. Isn't it pretty? It's
It's
very new.
lovely.
Ah.
It's a nice color of an iPhone. I like how they came out with more
I
colors.
don't want to get like the boring one, so I went for it's like an ice blue. I kind of thought it was like cool looking, chill
nice.
looking. So my iPhone, that's my honest answer.
Yeah, I like that answer. It's keeping it simple, right? Nothing too
honest.
deep. What
It's
you
honest.
need.
It's true.
If you had 25 hours in a day, what would you do with that extra hour?
So that one, I would say probably. I love going for walks. I live in Florida. I live outside of Orlando,
Oh, I'm jealous.
and it's cool. Where are you guys right now?
Utah.
Oh, that's right, Utah. Utah is awesome. Utah is beautiful.
Not right
I
now.
was watching this. I was watching a whole documentary about the Skinwalker Ranch in Utah. Do you even know about that place?
We do not.
Oh my gosh, the documentary's on History Channel. You got to check it out. It's pretty crazy. Anyway, sorry, I have look, a squirrel.
Quick plug.
If I had the extra hour, I'd go for extra walks with my Doberman and my wife and my kids, and just spend that extra hour with them. Or if they were busy, because I could see some scenarios where I'd say to my son, "Hey, you want to go for a walk?" And he'd be in the middle of like Valorant or Fortnite. So maybe I'd go to the gym for an extra hour. So something like that, probably.
Something productive.
Yeah.
Productive, fun, get some sunshine, spend some time with people I love.
Nice. I love it. Yeah. What around part of Orlando? Is it around
I live
Kissimmee?
about 45 minutes north of Orlando. So like from my house to Disney World, I live in
see.
Winter Springs, Florida. So from my house to Disney World, it's about a 45-minute drive.
Okay. Interesting.
Not too far.
I've been to the area a couple times, and it's so magical. It's really
It's cool. It's magical.
It's magical. What aspect of your personality adds the most value to the world, would you say?
I'd like to think it's my sense of humor, because I really try wherever I am to try to make somebody laugh or somebody smile.
Me too.
And I just kind of feel like in our world, it's almost weird that it's weird. Like sometimes like I'll just see somebody, at the gym or something, or going into a restaurant, and they're just kind of like, "Hi, can I take your order?" So I'm always like, "Hey, what's up? How are you doing?" So maybe friendliness, personality, and you can just see like it takes people aback a little bit. But I try every day. Like I have a goal. I always write this in my journal, and at the end of the day, I write it down. Did I make somebody laugh? Did I make somebody smile? Did I bring some good? So I'd like to think that that's probably something that I at least try to do to add value to the world. I mean, maybe I walk away and people are like, "What a loser. He's weird." I mean, I don't know, but at least in my mind, I think that I'm trying to bring a little bit of humor, a little bit of laughter. So I would say sense of humor.
That's really important. I don't know a lot of people that make such an effort to have other people smile. So
yeah, I think it's lacking. I mean, there's so many people that are going through it. You never know when you're looking at somebody, and maybe they don't come across happy, or they come across crabby or grumpy or whatever, whether it's school or at work or wherever you are. You never know what they're going through. And sometimes just that cracking a smile or saying something funny or giving them a compliment or just being kind, which is in your name of what you guys do, sometimes you never know, that could save somebody's life, honestly. So I'd like to think that that's what I do.
Yeah, I like that. You talk about how like people kind of think you're weird when you walk away if you're like overly happy. And we have a saying on our board that says, "Be happy, it confuses people." Because a lot of people will be confused on why you're so optimistic. But the more you try to be optimistic, the more you will be optimistic.
Yep. I agree. And I always like to say, I'd rather say, "Oh, I'm sorry. Was I being too nice?" Like I'd rather do that than walk away and think to myself, "Man, I should have said something to that person. I should have helped her. Or I should have given them a compliment." So I'd rather apologize for being too kind than to regret having not been kind enough. 100% for sure.
That's smart.
I love that.
I love it.
Would you mind sharing with our listeners a little bit about what your story is and how it makes it you?
Sure. My upbringing was kind of tough. I grew up in kind of not a great area of Miami. In the 70s into the 80s, it was pretty tough neighborhood. My family situation was a little chaotic, and without going into too much detail, that was pretty rough. So as a kid, probably through sixth grade, it was bad. My neighborhood was bad. My home life was pretty chaotic and difficult. I went through a lot as a kid. I had a great teacher in sixth grade, Mr. Johnson, that I would say honestly, in some ways, he saved my life. And I remember talking to him about what I was going through. And it's different now than it was back then. Back then, it kind of wasn't commonplace for kids to kind of share things, or child abuse or neglect, or things like that were kind of hidden. It wasn't as out in the open. Obviously, there wasn't social media, there wasn't the internet. It was different. And so that was kind of a tough situation, coupled with the fact that where I grew up, the school I was in, the kind of kids in my neighborhood, I was bullied to the extreme. So it wasn't just, being made fun of, or not that that's no big deal. That's a big deal. But it was more than just words. It was physical, pretty bad. I had my nose broken a bunch of times, and, rib fractures, and I still have scars on my back and
Oh my goodness.
from things. So it was like a tough, really, really tough situation. Kind of moving through that into middle school and into high school, things rapidly change, and I can get into why. But things got better. I was a theater major. I went to college in NYU and I studied theater. And then from there, ended up coming back to Miami in my early 20s, and I became a registered nurse. And I worked pediatric oncology, mostly actually adolescent oncology. So I took care of teenagers with cancer, and then worked in pediatric ICU, and I was a flight nurse. Then I was a trauma nurse, trauma ICU in Miami. And then I moved on to working in an emergency department and as a leader, and became a hospital administrator, and then worked for a company today where I consult and I speak, and I've written some books. And I have three kids, and they're wide in ages. I have a 23-year-old son, and I have a 12-year-old son, and I have a 7-year-old daughter. So it's really very cool. But my upbringing and my childhood, and that was one of the reasons why I really felt very connected to what you all are doing, Stand for Kind, and the purpose of this podcast, because I get on a deep personal level what it feels like to have nowhere to turn. I didn't feel safe at home. I didn't feel safe at school. I didn't feel safe in the neighborhood. I didn't feel safe with my friends, or had any friends for a period of time, until certain things happened in my life that changed that. So I have a lot of empathy and compassion for kids that are going through that kind of difficulty. So that's kind of a very quick synopsis of 54 years of life, but that's kind of the trajectory of it all.
Wow.
You don't see a lot of physical abuse anymore, especially in terms of like bullying. A lot of people like to hide behind their screen or hide behind their words.
People are too scared to do that now.
Yeah, I mean, I'm at the point right now where if you asked me, would I go back and change anything? I wouldn't. As bad as it was, there's times that I've gone back in my mind and talked to myself as a younger person, just literally had a conversation with like 11-year-old Rich, or 12-year-old Rich, or 9-year-old Rich, and just said, it's going to get better. You're going to get through this. I would do that if I could, but honestly, there's a ancient philosopher named Rumi, Rumi, and he had this quote that says, "The wound is the place where the light enters you." In other words, the suffering in your life, the pain in your life, the difficulties, the traumas that you've gone through, not to minimize them and say, wow, they're awesome. They're not. But that pain, those wounds, if you're wise and if you pay attention, that's where the light enters you. So for example, nothing gets stronger without pain. Nothing gets stronger without work. Nothing gets stronger. If you think about a muscle, you have to continually lift and break down those muscle fibers so that they can break down and they get stronger, and you create muscle hypertrophy, or your muscles get bigger. So if you want to get a big muscle, you have to hurt it to make it get that way. And I kind of feel, in a way, the pain that we all go through in our youth or in our lives, that pain is something that we can turn to, and that becomes our strength. You probably have known kids who maybe have gotten through and not had a lot of drama in their lives, and it's been okay. And then one little thing happens and they're a mess.
Yeah.
And then kids who have been through a lot. And then when something happens, they're like, yeah, I got this. So I kind of look back on my life and all the stuff that I went through and the difficulties and the pain. Those wounds, I think, are where the light, if you will, entered me, so that I was able to kind of get through to get to a better place.
That reminded me of a saying that I've heard, like the light entering the wound one. There's one that I heard that was, on the windiest hills you find the toughest trees. So the more you go through, the more you're willing to withstand, and the more you're willing to go through. So pain is growth, and growth is pain.
Well, if you think about it, nature teaches us that. It's the same for coral reefs. If you go to an island where the surf is real gentle, the coral reefs are not beautiful and vibrant. If you go to the side of the island where things are a little rougher, you would think, well, that would break the coral reefs down. But instead, they have to be stronger. They become more vibrant, more colorful. They attract more sea life. I think nature teaches us that. And look, that's not to say, wow, pain is great and suffering is great. I'm not saying that, but the fact that it happens, that's life. That is what part of life is. And you can find ways to take that and turn it around so that your pain is something that you get stronger from. So for sure.
It's a great perspective of pain, or any sort of pain, whether it be mental, physical, verbal. What you shake hands with is what you hold on to. What are your thoughts about this?
Yeah, that's a quote that I shared with Sean when we were talking, one of your folks, and I appreciate that you guys opened up talking about that. I heard it. It was so interesting. I heard it randomly in a podcast, and I honestly, for $1 million, I couldn't tell you who the person was. I listened to so many podcasts, and what you shake hands with is what you hold on to struck me, and how I would interpret it for you all. Like you said, shaking hands is a form of greeting, or welcoming somebody, right? So like you meet somebody, you meet a new friend, you meet somebody at a party, you meet somebody new at school or somebody you haven't seen in a while. Now the new form of shaking hands is like, what's up? You just bump an elbow, right? But pre-COVID, I think that what that means is what you welcome into your life, or what you introduce into your life, what you greet, is sometimes what you hold on to. So in other words, to be wise and to be thoughtful about the people, the things, the situations, and the places that you shake hands with. And shaking hands is the metaphor. So shaking hands with meaning that you're greeting, that you're grabbing, that you're welcoming, because that ends up being something that you hold on to. So as an example, maybe there's a person in your circle that constantly is making bad choices and is constantly just bringing trouble into the circle and is disruptive to your life. Or even somebody that you've gotten in your mind that you want to be friends with this person for some reason. You're like, I just, they're really cool. Everybody likes them and I want to be friends with this person. So you're shaking hands with that person, figuratively speaking, right? And you're holding on to this relationship. But this person in every situation puts you down. They make fun of you. When you're in a group of people, their whole bit is about putting you down to make themselves feel better. You're holding on to that unhealthy relationship.
It takes two people to make a healthy handshake.
Absolutely. To be kind of wise about, what we hold on to be kind of wise about what are we shaking hands with? What choices are we making in our lives? Literally everything that you have in your life, good or bad, mostly comes down to some choices that you've made. Every friend that you have, every relationship that you're in, there are certain things that are handed to us. I didn't choose my parents or where I grew up, or I get that. I didn't choose, the fact that, my grandparents came from Italy. There's things that are just there. But then there's things that you have made choices about, who you hung out with, what you did, where you went, all those kinds of things. And so I think we also have to think about, how does someone let go of the things that are unhealthy? And I would use kind of an analogy, if that's okay. So do you guys have like a backpack? Do you use a backpack like for school or anything?
Yeah.
Okay. Have you ever gotten to a point where you just use this backpack for the whole year and then you're like, I got to clean out my backpack, right? So you open up the backpack and what's in there? Like things that like are pretty bad, right? Right. So you've got like gum, from that like you bought, and it's got like pieces of hair and like sand and glitter stuck to it. You've got crumpled pieces of paper. You've got, broken pens. Have you ever done that? Like you reach for a pen and there's like parts of a pen. You're like, how did that happen?
Mm-hmm.
So what's the process? You open the backpack and you start to go, am I going to ever chew this gum? And I know that sometimes maybe, third period calculus, like even that piece of gum would be okay, but let's just go with no. You're like, I'm not chewing that gum, right? So you're like, no, I'm not going to chew that gum. Are you going to write with that broken pen? Well, the spring is gone. It's broken. It's leaking purple everywhere. You go through your backpack, and by process of elimination, you decide that there's certain things that aren't serving you. The gum doesn't serve you. The pen you can't write with. That crumpled piece of paper, that receipt, you don't need that receipt from 7-Eleven when you bought a Kit Kat bar and a Slurpee anymore. The receipt does you no good. I think that's the same with the things that are not healthy in our lives, or the relationships or the people. It's like cleaning out your backpack. And what happens? Once you go through your backpack and you realize that you don't need a bunch of this stuff, your backpack's easier to use because you can find things that serve you. Now you can find your book that you need. You can find the pen that works. Yeah. And it's lighter, right? So now all of a sudden, the burden, the things that you're carrying around are not weighing you down. And that backpack, your life, if you will, is now easier to use. It's more efficient. So I kind of feel like one of the things that a lot of, if I could go back and talk to my 15, 14, 16, 17-year-old self, I would say, bro, like, you don't need that. You don't need them. You don't need this person. You don't need that group. They're not there for you. They don't have your back. A great way to tell a good friend is this. How do you feel when you're with them? When you're successful and things are going well for you, how do they react? If when you're with somebody, you feel good, like you feel good about yourself, that's a sign that you're in a healthy friendship. If when you do something great, you get a great grade, you get picked for something, you win a contest, if that person's there for you, like if they're not like, yeah, well, whatever, bro, I mean, that wasn't that big of a deal, or yeah, man, I got that last year, or yeah, that was just a participation trophy. Pay attention to that. That's their insecurity there. But if they're like, man, I'm so proud of you, bro. You rocked that. That was amazing. That's a sign of something healthy. So your life is like your backpack. Are you carrying around a bunch of old pieces of gum, broken pens, and crumpled pieces of 7-Eleven receipts? Or is it efficient? Is it clean? Is it lighter? And is it serving you?
Yeah, I haven't. I mean, I've never thought about it that way. And I like how you into detail figuratively you went.
Yeah. It was
I mean, think about
to look at.
Well, think about, I don't know, like whoever you consider to be your best friend, there's a reason why that person's your best friend. And it's always that, like Ethan, like you said, a healthy handshake has to come from both sides. If you've ever shook anyone's hand and they just kind of gave you this lame, like weird, squishy, like weird, that's not a great handshake. And so sometimes friendships like that, where you're grabbing on and you're like, you mean it. And the other person's kind of like half in, half out. You got to pay attention to that.
And there's those clingy people that squeeze it till it's broken.
There's that too. And you know what? I mean, sometimes we all have moments in our lives or periods in our lives where we're needy or clingy. And I've always thought about friendship from what I learned, you're like that, is I once heard, people are friends for a reason, a season, or a lifetime. So people come into your life for a reason, a season, or a lifetime. A reason. Maybe you became friends with that person because they were going to be the person that was brought into your life to introduce you to martial arts, or to introduce you to whatever, to bring you somewhere. A season. You went away to summer camp and you met somebody. You're like, I love this guy. They're the best. And then summer camp ends and you literally never talk to them ever again. It was a season. And then there's people that, where you're at now, seniors in high school, when you're my age, you might still be friends with those people. They are lifetime friends. All of those people are awesome. The reason people are awesome, the season people are awesome, and the lifetime people are awesome. It's just having the discernment in your life, especially when you're young, to just know that and to be kind of at peace with that, because everything is about learning. It's just, everything is about progress and not perfection. Just don't even try for perfection, because perfection is frustrating, but it's about progress and learning, So I'm sure in martial arts, you want to be the best that you want to do your form as perfect as you possibly can. But if you don't, that doesn't mean you're a horrible martial artist. That just means you're now going to learn from it. So the next time you can nail that form even better.
Going back to seasoned friends,
Mm-hmm.
it brought something up. You know, if you have such what seems to be a healthy, fun relationship with a seasoned friend, and you two split off, we now have the technology to try to keep in touch, and we now have the ability to try to keep in touch. And so when you see them not make that effort after you've split up, that's sort of a takedown.
Yeah. Yeah. And it lets you know though that it's like Maya Angelou said, when people show you who they are, believe them. So when you have that ability, like, you went to summer camp in Vermont and now, you're going back to Utah and you're like texting, what's up? And then, the first couple times like, hey, what's up? Great. And you whatever. And then 2 weeks, 3 weeks, a month later, like, what's up? And, you don't see the 3 dots, or you see the 3 dots and then it goes away. You're like, oh, I know they were about to respond, and then nothing. And then it's like maybe 3 days later, they go, hey, what's up? And you're like, how you doing? 3 days later, you pay attention to that. That's their way of maybe just, nobody's going to say, hey, I don't really want to be friends with you anymore. Sorry. I mean, it's really unusual for people to be that blunt. Usually it's just kind of like not watering a plant. The plant's there, you don't water it anymore. It just kind of slowly just kind of wilts and dies away. Nobody was like, I hate that plant, I'm cutting it up, I'm going to like cut all the leaves off. It's just like, you stop nurturing it. So I think you just pay attention to that and you say to yourself, that's kind of a bummer. I was hoping this was going to be a bigger deal, but you know what? I had a great time with them at summer camp. They were awesome to me. I learned, they taught me this language, or, we did this together. I learned how to scuba dive or whatever. And now it's done. And you never know. I mean, a year later, they might come back, they might not, but that's all part of just kind of the path of life, is just knowing that reason, season, lifetime, and not to feel crushed when the reason or the season is not a lifetime, because very few people will end up that way for you. But that's okay, because you're better off with just a few really, truly, deeply good friends than a bunch of like shallow acquaintances that are just hanging out with you because, you can get them a discount at Burger King or something, so it's like,
Yeah.
People love their
that's how it is. But, I think, for you guys, and when you think about, what we were talking about, even about, like pain and all those different things, like in life, I would say don't ever ignore the pain. A lot of people in our society, it's like they experience pain, or they're going through suffering or anxiety or depression. And it's crazy to me that, especially for kids, that sometimes I think parents and I think adults, I'm a parent, I'm an adult, and, we have to be careful not to say, you'll be fine, just get over it, don't worry about it, it's going to be better. Of course, that comes from a good place. But it's kind of like this. Let's say you reached into the dishwasher because you were emptying the dishwasher because you're such good young men, and you reach in real aggressively, Everett, like you're aggressive with you have aggressive dishwasher emptying skills, and you reach in and a fork like goes all the way through your hand, like just all the way through, like boom, right out the other side. You don't sit there and go, oh, that's a shame. Well, I'll just work around this.
How
Like,
unfortunate.
I'll just be fine. Like, I'll go to school. People be like, Everett, hi. Everett, is that a fork through your hand? Yeah, it's okay. It stopped bleeding. I'm good. All good. No worries. You go to scratch yourself. You poke yourself in the eye with the fork. That seems so absurd. You would get help. Like, you would go to the ER. You'd get them to take the fork out, maybe do some sutures. You'd have a bandage. The wound would heal. Why wouldn't we do that when we're depressed, when we're anxious, or when we're having thoughts that are, not healthy, whether they be suicidal thoughts or, listen, you get help, you talk to a professional, you get therapy. And if it's not at that level, it's even just talking to someone that you trust in your family, a loved one or a family member or a group of friends that you trust. But, it's not just to say, when I was talking about pain, like just, let it make you stronger and toughen up, bro. It's not even that. You should never ignore it. I think it's something that you have to just look at, deal with, confront, and don't be afraid to
Accept.
I would say ask for help.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's amazing how helpful it can be to treat mental wounds like physical ones.
Yeah. And yet, we kind of don't realize that those are the ones, you know, someone as a child, when I was a child, being told you're stupid, you're never going to be anything, you know, I think that hurt worse than being beaten. I think that because the being beaten part kind of heals. It's the other part that kind of sticks with you because you spend a lot of the time in your life with those voices in your head repeating those things to yourself. And so if it's okay, I'd love to tell you guys kind of like what I found for my life that kind of helped me get through those kind of dark kind of times.
All right, go
Feel
ahead.
free. Feel free.
Yeah, sure.
Go
So no
on.
problem. Go ahead, proceed if you will.
Carry on.
For me, it was a couple of things. It was gratitude. It was prayer and meditation, and it was choosing to find the good in every day. And I even did that with my older son, who was bullied a little bit. He has a learning disability, and when he was younger, I used to ask him every day, "How was school today?" And so, what do you think he said to me? "I was horrible. This kid wasn't nice to me. This kid picked on me. This kid made fun of me." And so instead, I started asking him, "Hey, bro, what was the best thing that happened to you today?" And what that started in him was it started him looking for what was the best thing that happened that day. So it almost became normal that when he'd get in the car, I'd go, "Hey, bro," and he'd go, "I have to tell you the best thing that happened to me today." His day didn't necessarily change. People weren't necessarily magically becoming nicer to him. But all of a sudden, he was starting to look for the good in his life. There was an author and a speaker and a psychologist named Dr. Wayne Dyer. And he said, when you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. And I think a lot of us in our life, it's kind of a purposeful thing where you're trying to look for the good in that day. You're trying to find the good in that day. So to be clear, things like gratitude, where you're looking for what you're grateful for, surrounding yourself with people that support you, or I call it your tribe. For him, when he was going through such a tough time and being bullied, he's a really good musician. He's really good at art. And when he kind of started surrounding himself with other kids that were really into music and into art, he had this whole new group of people that accepted him and supported him and were cool with him and loved him. And literally, it went from being picked on and bullied to having great friends that he's still friends with today, and he's 23 years old. All of those things are like anchors. So if you think about a boat with rough waves and then it throws down an anchor, the anchor doesn't make the waves stop. It doesn't make the storm stop, but the anchor kind of steadies the boat until the storm kind of chills out. So the waves and the tough stuff in your life and the storms in your life are going to be there. But the purposeful stuff that you can do, like looking for the good in your life, surrounding yourself with your tribe, or finding people that are like you or that are into what you're into, that support you and care about you, trying to be grateful no matter what it is. Like literally, if it's that, it was, pizza day in the cafeteria or something, like the small, or you got a good parking spot or whatever it is. Those things are all like anchors that kind of just hold your boat in place while the waves are rough. They don't change the storm, doesn't make the storm go away, but it just kind of steadies you. And for me, that's what I did. 7th grade, I could have gone into jail. I mean, it was like a bad situation. And I kind of found my people. I found people that were into theater, and I became an actor, and I ended up getting a scholarship and going to college and studying theater in a really cool place. And in high school, I was in a performing arts high school, and I went from being like no friends to having the most amazing friends, but I found my tribe. And I think a lot of times kids try to force themselves into a group or force themselves to be accepted by people. They're shaking hands with people per se that aren't really their tribe. And it's not who you really are. And I think that desire to be accepted is great, but it's not the anchor that most people need.
Yeah, I feel like with being the anchor, it doesn't change the storm, like you said. And I want to share a personal experience. In hockey, we're not the best team in the league. I'll admit that. And we don't really care about that. But one thing our coach always tells us before we go out there and play on the ice is weather the storm. And so he knows that we're not going to change the teams. The teams aren't going to change for us, where there's nothing we can do. And yeah, it upsets us that we're not the best. And sometimes, we wish we could be better, but we just go out there and we play because we found our tribe. This whole team that we're on and that we're a part of is our tribe. We're out there with people that we like to be with. So he says, weather the storm. Don't worry about the scoreboard. Just be out there to play. So I love.
And if you think about it, Everett, you probably had games that you won and you felt great, of course. And you probably had games that you lost and you kind of felt bummed out because you lost and you wish you would have won. But you probably enjoyed the game. I mean, even when you lose, there's probably moments you're like, bro, that shot was great, or that block was great, or man, when you checked that kid, that was amazing. And, you know, it's weird how two people can have the same day, but walk away from that day in a completely different way. Have you ever noticed that?
Yeah, absolutely.
There's a Cherokee story, a saying, where you will. It's part of their tradition. A friend of mine shared this with me, who's Native American. Grandfather's walking with his grandson, and he says to his grandson, inside of us, there's two wolves fighting. One wolf is negativity, bitterness, and anger, and the other wolf is love, compassion, and inspiration.
Angels.
And then he stops talking. Right. And so the little boy says to the grandfather, like, you didn't finish your story. And grandfather says, what do you mean? You said there's two wolves fighting, Grandpa, but you never said which wolf wins the fight. And the grandfather said, whichever wolf you feed. So your day is sometimes going to have its challenges, but it might not be the worst day ever if your thoughts, your mental attitude is going in a different direction, where you just kind of roll with it. Like, we were having tech issues before we started this podcast. And yeah, it's a little frustrating, but we were still smiling, kind of laughing about it. And it's a little bit later than we intended it to be, but you know what? This was supposed to happen. So we made it happen in some way, and hopefully some good will come out of this. So no matter what the challenges are, always ask yourself, which wolf am I feeding? Am I feeding into the thoughts of this is horrible, this is the worst, I'm so upset? Or are you like, hey, you know what? At least I got to be with my friends today. Or, hey, at least the room's air conditioned. Or, you know, hey, at least like I've got a bed to sleep in tonight. So I think that's a powerful thing, is the power of our thoughts guide us kind of whether or not we're going to have a good day or a bad day. And I think that's a lesson that I learned kind of younger in my life that I've carried through my entire life, that on literally my worst days, I lost my dad when I was 22, and I've been through a lot of bad stuff. And even in those dark times, I've tried to say, where is the good in this right now? Or what am I supposed to learn? Or where's the beauty? Or where's the joy? Or where's the happiness? Or where's the lesson? And if you can live your life that way, it's a lot tougher to have a hard day.
Yeah. Being a senior, I've experienced a little bit of that, just because I was talking with my friend Jordan, who's also a senior, and she was like, I'm happy to be a senior because I'm happy to, get the diploma and walk away from all the academic stress that it provides. But she was like, but every day I walk away and it doesn't matter how rude the teachers were, how hard the work was, I'm still happy to be here. And I kind of don't want to leave just because of the people. So she's got that negative that's in there, but she does look at the positive of, the social aspect that she enjoys, and being part of all the clubs that she's part of. She's part of FBLA, and anything that makes her happy, she walks away from the school day not sad. So I like the thought of always looking for the good, and even if it's the worst day ever, you can still find something that's good. So always look. Man,
you can't change the world outside of you. You can't change the weather. You can't change someone's attitude. You can't change the words that come out of somebody's mouth. You can just change how you interpret it and how you take it in and how you use it. And I learned very early on that no matter what's going to happen around me, it might hurt. I might not like it. It might make me feel bad, but I'm going to bounce back from that. I'm going to find what I'm supposed to learn from it. I'm going to find how to turn that around. It's not easy. And that's like we've all heard this. Oh, wow, that's easy to say, but not so easy to do. Yeah, no kidding. Like, that's like me saying to Ethan, yeah, it's easy to say you're a black belt, but it's not easy to do. You have to be like, bro, like, I've got thousands and thousands of hours of training that have gotten me to where I am. So of course it's easy to say. It's easy to say, I'm a black belt. It's not easy to do. Nothing worth having. Nothing is easy to do. Nothing. Like when somebody says easy as pie, if you've ever baked a pie, it's not easy to bake a pie. It's hard. It's like, so I think it's when people say, well, I'm going through a tough time, so it's easy for you to say. Yeah, it is easy for me to say. I own that. It's easy for me to say. But the fact that it's hard to do is probably an indicator that it's worth it. Because the things that are hard to do, that take effort and time, those are usually the things that give you the most.
That's
Period.
what I tell myself a lot is it's the work, it's what you put into it that actually gives it its value. If something's given to you, it's nice, but if you work hard for it, oh my God, it's so much more cool.
I had a friend when I was in high school whose parents were really wealthy, and for his 16th birthday they bought him a Porsche, and everybody was like, "Wow!" So this
Yeah.
kid gets a Porsche, right? 7 days after his birthday party, he totals the Porsche,
Oh,
wrecks
no.
it.
Common story.
Wait, 3 days later, his dad buys him another Porsche.
Okay.
That's great. So
I don't like
about
this kid's parents.
no, 2 weeks after that, he wrecks that Porsche. Parents are mad. You're grounded. You're not getting a Porsche again. A month later, they bought him a Porsche.
Oh.
He wrecked that one too. And then they bought him a fourth one. And that one, I think he took care of for a while, but he never really, and like everybody else was like one Porsche would be, we'd all, like most of us would be like every morning, you'd wake up and just put your head and just stare at it, you know? But this kid, everything was just handed to him and he didn't value it. You know, and I remember my first car, I had to work for it and it was like 10 years old and all this kind of stuff. I loved that car. I washed that car every Friday. It was spotless. I loved it because I had to work for it. So it's not to say that someone who's well-to-do or is given something by their parents, that's not good. That's amazing if they appreciate it and they value it. But man, I got to tell you something. I valued my car way more than this kid valued his brand new fourth Porsche, for sure. So I agree with that. There's a bunch of people listening to this going like, somebody wrecked 4 Porsches. Wow.
Yeah,
but yeah, it's a thing.
I lost a lot of brain cells hearing that story.
I think we all feel that.
We'd like to thank Rich Bluni for sharing his thoughts and experiences with us. You can follow him on TikTok at TheRichBee and on Instagram at MementoTheRichBee. You can also listen to his podcast Above Board with Candor Path on Spotify.
Each of us are capable of incredible things. Don't shake hands with the negative. Don't make peace with the negative. Keep a positive vision for yourself in mind. And if you're having thoughts of suicide, please speak up and ask for help. You are not alone. Call the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline at 1-800-273-8255.
Great podcast today. Thank you again to Rich Bluni for joining us. Thanks, man. I really appreciate it.
Thank you guys. You guys are awesome. Keep up the
Loved
great
having you,
work.
man.
Thank you for what you do.
Special thanks to my co-host, Everett. And of course, a huge thank you to everyone for listening to this episode of the Teens4Wellness podcast. And remember, you matter.